copywriter working across a wide range of brands from AT&T to Norwegian Cruise Line, and over time has moved into leading the kind of work that doesn't just get made but actually stands out. I'm so excited to have you here today with us at Fully Managed Dylan. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, I don't know how to follow that introduction, but I'll do my best.
So before becoming a creative director, you spent years as a copywriter shaping ideas from the ground up. So I'm curious, what's something about how you think through an idea today that still comes from those early writing days?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I think there's two things I can think of right off the bat. I think one is just like your personal. Everyone has like kind of a personal brand, if you will, or like a personal taste that everything kind of stems from. The types of ideas you find interesting, the things you find funny.
Yeah.
Like so you're constantly pulling from that bank, and that bank comes from the things that you digest or that you enjoy, right? So like I think like really great writers are really great readers. So I tend to find that the best writers that I've worked with tend to read a lot. I like to read a lot. And the types of things they read really influence what they write. I think it's the same for like film and TV. You'll find, comedy fans write a certain way, and it might be different than people who are like absorbing Paul Thomas Anderson and constantly, or Quentin Tarantino. They come with a different, if they let those things kind of influence their work, then they naturally, I think, come with some of those sensibilities, or some of those preferences that translate to the page. I think the other thing, for me that I started doing really early on that's really carried over is a lot of research. So it's like not sexy to talk about maybe, but, but I think a lot of advertising in general, or a lot of the most interesting ideas come from really good research, right? So a lot of times that will happen in the strategy phase, but I think the best ideas and the best creatives that I've worked with tend to do their own research to some degree, and they take the original brief and find an even more unique way in through some statistic they found, or some person that did certain a certain thing, and then we reach out to that person and bring them in, or there's a ton of different ways to utilize research. But that was something, when you start out and you have no idea what you're doing, research tends to give you a lot of confidence, because you're like, okay, hey, I know this idea will work, or should work for this brand, or do this thing because I have research to support it. Or but now that's become even more important, because now advertising's changed so much, where oftentimes we're not just writing a bunch of 30-second TV scripts anymore. We're like trying to find an idea that will that's not traditional, or like, hey, here's this big idea that maybe TV comes out, like there's some TV associated with it, but the core central piece of the idea is something more experiential or activation led or digital even. So I think research tends to inform everything from, finding a human truth that you can write a comedy script out of, to, hey, what's a statistic that like you can center an entire idea around.
That's cool. That's a very cool answer. And coming up in high bar creative environments tends to shape your instincts fast, I can imagine. So
for sure.
What do you trust your gut on today that you wouldn't have earlier in your career?
That's a really good question. As well. Let's see. I think it's identifying an idea that will garner like earned, like I guess you call it earned media, but like essentially an idea that people will talk about. I think when you're starting out, you're not really sure. You're like, oh, this idea seems good, but then you show it to someone at BBDO or Christopher Porter Roguski or wherever else that's above you, and then they're like, nah, this like, it's a funny thought, but like there's nowhere to go. And I think as you do that, you start to realize, and as you start to actually see your ideas get made, you realize, oh, these are the idea needs this and this and this and this in order to stretch, right? In order to go without, a massive media budget, even potentially. So it's funny. I think, this, the thing that probably shaped this the most for me is at Crispin Porter Bogusky. They used to have
Okay.
this method where, and you may have heard of this, but I think so. They used to essentially do this PR method of ideas. So every creative idea needed to be presented as a like a PR headline. So like something that like a magazine or a newspaper or a digital thing would write. So you would write, who did the thing, what the activation was, and then why they did it. So like, for example, I think like Domino's paving for pizza won pretty big at Cannes, and the way that they presented that was, Domino's paves roads, potholes across America because bad roads shouldn't keep you from bad pizza. So that is how the idea was presented the very first time. And then you can see how that's like, oh, that's crazy for a pizza company to do that. I could see how people would write about that. And that's how you kind of now determine, that's how I now determine, you create a gut that tells you, okay, hey, that's pretty interesting because I could see people actually writing about that where, so and so does a commercial where someone falls into a coffee table is probably not going to garner the same level of interest, so you can really judge an idea based on how is it interesting enough for people to write about.
Yeah, that's a very cool technique.
Yeah,
Very cool.
it's taken a lot of people pretty far. I think I would like to think myself included, and it evolves. As you do it, you're like, okay, well, it doesn't work 100% of the time. So then you adapt things, to it. So everyone has their own method, but yeah, that was really formative for me. Just that method of, and now you can, without needing the PR, angle, you can look at an idea and say, okay, yeah, that has something that has the element or the twist in it that's interesting. And it helps a lot with like helping younger creatives like find their way there when you can look at an idea and say, hey, this is what this is missing, or this is what this isn't.
Absolutely. And you have worked across like serious categories like healthcare and finance, and also more playful ones like snacks and toys. I'm curious, is there a category you secretly think is harder to make great work in?
Yes, I definitely. I hope I don't get I don't get in trouble from clients for saying so, but I think I think there's a couple really hard. I mean, every category has its challenge, right?
Yeah.
So like, in consumer packaged goods, you're trying to, it's not direct to consumer really. So you're like selling a consumer who then has to go to some place that you can't control, to buy it, or, in QSR or like quick service restaurant, or I worked on Domino's for years and years and years. And that model is amazing. They've really figured some great things out, but then your ideas have to go through a board of franchisees, which makes it difficult because every idea has to like really, it has to work. Right. So that has its own challenges, but I find that the most challenging, is telecom, at least that I've worked on. So like,
Okay.
like phone carriers. And the reason it's really difficult is because they sort of exist within a bubble. There's nothing really like them, right? So they are constantly, seeing what each other's is doing and then reacting to it. So there's a lot of like quick turn things where you're like, okay, hey, this place did this, and now we have to do this, or we have to do this to beat this place. And they're all talking about the same phones, so it becomes very, reactive, or it can. And that, yeah, so that becomes difficult because, you put together this really nice, strategy with the team, and you're working toward, something in the future. Right. And you've got all the steps in place and you're working toward it slowly. And then someone does something, and then all of your planning goes out the window because now you have to focus on this thing. So it it's hard to like put together long term plans with telecom, but it can be done, and the work can be really amazing. So I've worked with some really great people doing that have like figured it out, but it is a definitely like a rat race. But that's
That's
probably
interesting.
for me the most difficult to work on.
Okay. Okay, cool. That's interesting. And you've also written for everything from like Sun Chips to AT&T to
Yeah.
Norwegian Cruise Line, very different audiences, very different stakes. I'm curious, when you jump between brands like that, what's the first thing you try to understand before, writing a single line?
Yeah. I, I would say well, there's a lot you have to sort of figure out before you get there. But I think the first thing is, I think tone, but because, like you said, I've had the fortune of jumping around a lot. You really have to like dig into everything they've done, like up to them, and especially in the recent past. And like sometimes a brand or an agency will have a brand book that has like all of this information about tone. To be honest with you, I tend to find that they are like a little bit overwrought, where it's like they all sound the same. We're like we're kind and warm, and there's always a smile on our face. Like every brand is nice, in general. So they all kind of sound the same in a brand book to some degree. So I find that going back and like looking at the work that they like or that they've made, right? The work that clients have bought. So I think when seeing something on a page, some words, and you're like, yeah, that's us. But then when you see what clients actually buy, and what creative directors actually, what they like and bring to clients, then you can better craft something that will work. So I think that's the difference between like, when I was younger, I was like, I was a little more of a machine, maybe. Where you were just like writing like 30 scripts like for like in every day just to like try see what sticks. And now I think based on that experience, you get better at being like, okay, I'm looking at their past work, I'm looking at tonally where they're at, the types of ideas they buy, and you can really hone in on a third of of what I used to write, but almost all of them are will work, right? So
Yeah,
that's like, I guess that's the first thing is just like going back and looking at past work, which I guess sounds a little cliche, but it tends to tell you. And then based on the brief, if the brief is like, hey, we want to completely change who we are and where we've been, then great. You have to look at the past work to see who they are and where they've been. But then, I think there's also a lot of hallmarks of the type of work that clients
that's
buy
cool.
and where you can push them. Yeah.
And stepping into leadership usually means like unlearning as much as learning.
Yeah.
What's something you had to let go of to become a better creative leader?
Yeah, that's a weird one right now in our industry. I feel like I have not had to let go of as much as I thought I would when making
Okay.
this jump, and it's because I think right now in the industry um, a lot of creative leaders are also doing the work. So there's a lot of like player coaches right now, in a lot of agencies I find. So you're like, yes, we're working with teams often, but a lot of the times we're the ones doing the writing and the, the design work and things like that. So I think that comes from, a couple places, but or there's lots of reasons for that. And the industry's like a little
Yeah.
wild right now.
Yeah.
So that comes from that to some degree, but I also think there's like doing the work and like leading the work. It can be hard to do both, but it also puts you closer to it. So you understand it better. So I think I thought I'd have to unlearn like, okay, I need to do less. But actually I've been fortunate to be in the situation where I'm still getting to do the work that I love, but I'm also
That's
getting to
cool.
like lead clients and lead brands. I think to actually answer your question and not skip around it. I think, when you are working with a team, I think I've learned two things. I think the thing I've had to unlearn is essentially, the urge to just like do it. If it's like, oh
Yeah.
man, this is pretty close. I know, how we can really quickly fix this, and it would probably take me 10 minutes. Right. But that doesn't help anybody. Right. So,
Yes.
it doesn't help me because I shouldn't, that's not my role in that scenario. And it doesn't help, this team who
The
I'm working
team,
with because they don't learn anything. Right. Yeah,
yeah.
so I think just learning to resist the urge to just do it really quick and trying to find a way to, articulate feedback in a way that gets them there, but feels like, that it's still theirs and they still own it. I think is really important. It's something that, when I was starting out, I worked with some people who would help me and teach me. And then I worked with more people who would just take the work and do it. And then the next time I saw the script, I was
Yeah.
like, okay, now you have to explain to me why you did all that. Cause otherwise I don't learn, I don't know anything. I don't get any better. So I think that's the thing you unlearn. But yeah, I think it's interesting because I haven't had to fully unlearn it because, of the landscape we're in right
Yeah.
now, where a lot of creative leaders are also, getting their hands dirty, which, is maybe a good thing. I think it used to be where like once you get to a certain point in your career, like you're not actually doing any writing or any designing or any, there's no art directing. You're just telling other people what to do, or shepherding them a certain way, which is not a bad thing, but
Yeah.
I think it's good to stay sharp. If you have to do the work, it's easy to stay sharp, which I like. So especially right now when things like AI and, are completely changing the way everyone works. Like if
It's
you
crazy
weren't actually
times.
if you're not actually doing the work and figuring it out, then like quickly you become sort of irrelevant, right? Potentially. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess you still have the creative taste, maybe you can, and the client building, relationship building skills. But
Yeah.
I think if you're not doing the work, then you're looking at an idea on the page and you're like, I don't even know how this works. So it's really hard to judge those ideas. I think staying in the work is good to stay sharp, but then knowing when to stay away is I guess the thing to learn.
And talking about ideas, what's a type of idea you're just like kind of tired of seeing at this point?
Oh, that's a funny question. Let's see. Um, so not too many people actually do this idea, but like in every deck, there's like some kind of truck idea. We're like, oh, we'll do like a food truck, or we'll do like a truck that goes to this event, or we'll do a truck that's in Times Square. I'm like tired of seeing like truck ideas. There's one, yeah, there's like one in every deck. It's different because not many of them get made because now, they're expensive and the juice usually isn't worth the squeeze. But, in terms of like ideas that actually get made, um, it's a tough one. I would say this may be a slight hot take, but I'm a little tired of, in Cannes every year, the ideas that do really well are like kind of nonsense ideas where like they're maybe they're for a real client, maybe they're not, but they don't drive any business results. Like they're not like you're not solving a real client like business problem. And I think a lot of those ideas are really cool. Don't get me wrong, but I think it would also be cool to see, ideas winning big or being recognized that were clever and also worked around like the constraints of, working on a real client and, their business problems, something that actually solved something real for a piece of business and worked and was effective. But was also like a really great idea. That is more of what I'd like to see. And I find that, I have a lot of friends. We've done it as well, but like, the game at Cannes is, and these other award shows sometimes is like, yeah, so I'd like to see more like real client work,
Yeah.
do well and less like, a little bit fluffy, you know, work when at these shows or be recognized at shows. So
Let's
I
hope
don't
for
know if that
that.
kind of answers your question. Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
that's my point of view.
And
It's always satisfying when like real client work is great and actually
absolutely,
works. It's the hardest thing to do
yeah.
in this industry.
There's nothing like genuine work, genuine cool
Yes,
work.
absolutely.
And
I completely agree.
what's something that used to impress you early in your career that doesn't anymore?
Um, I gotta, okay. That's, wow. I love that question. Um, I would say, okay, well, I mean, this is maybe going back to awards, but like, but I guess, yeah, having a lot of awards, like like, you used to walk in your creative director's, office and there's just like a wall of a bunch of trophies, and whatnot from all these different award shows. And, now that you start, doing them and winning them yourself, you're a little bit like, oh, that wasn't that crazy actually, or like the factors that it takes to win those are so outside of your control. That like it's pure luck to some degree. I think, yeah, you have to be talented, but I think that's one for sure. It's just like having a lot of awards or not having a lot of awards does not mean you're better or worse than someone who
Yeah,
does. It's like being at the right place at the right time with the right idea and the right people in the jury rooms. And, that's something where now I've taken it into like, okay, when you're looking at portfolios to potentially hire people, like, I don't care about whether or not they've like won
yeah,
anything because that's not really that just means you were at, a place that cared about winning awards at a certain time, right? It's more about the ideas and seeing their brain. And, I think one thing I didn't care as much about at the time, to reverse the question maybe a little bit, that I do now is like doing things that aren't advertising. So like I make music and, I have other creative hobbies that I think are really important for, informing like what you
cool.
do in your work. But I find that when you find other people who also do that, they tend to come at things in more interesting ways, or at least have, some other creative outlet to explore. I think when advertising is your
Yeah,
only creative out input and output, like, you tend to make stuff that looks like everything else in the industry. But I think if you can pull things and have other creative experiences outside, it tends to help shape a more unique point of view. So that kind of, I hope that
that's
sort of
very
answers
cool.
your question, and then a little reverse. But if I didn't answer your question, I'll come up with something else.
No, you did, and I love the reverse. I mean, that's such a fresh perspective, and I feel like I've never heard anyone else talk about it, and I feel like it's definitely something that people in this industry should, turn to more, finding more creative outlets than just
Yeah.
advertising. And for you, it's music, and what else?
Yeah, I like music. I do a lot of that. I've done some filmmaking on my own. Like my partner and I have directed,
Cool.
it's led to us directing spots for big clients, which we really
That's
enjoy,
awesome.
but it's really hard to do both jobs at the same time. So yeah, I mean, so I think that's really fun. But yeah, and then, there's other hobbies that aren't as creative, right? But like, but in terms of creative hobbies that kind of influence your work, I do a lot of film photography. I've been doing that since I was in college. So like,
Cool.
so yeah, it's just like, okay, that's made me like, given me a better eye when I'm like looking at design work, right? Cause I'm a writer. I'm not supposed to know anything about the way things look,
Yeah,
right? But I find that my partner and I tend to, fill each other's shoes often in things. It
that's
makes
so
us pretty versatile. I think sometimes, sadly, it puts us in a place where we're working siloed because it's like, okay, hey, I'll do this client and you take care of this
cool.
one. But I love, we have a great working relationship for that reason, because we both respect each other's talent in our technical, field of expertise. Right. So I think doing these other extracurricular things, is great, but it also leads to like the type of music that I make music. So I like certain types of music, and my work tends to reflect the soundtrack, or the score on my work tends to reflect that.
So,
And the types of like, creatives or musicians that I like to work with, and the types of like music houses I like to work with, is often reflective of like, hey, like we vibe on the same type of music, or hey, I really like this like syncopated thing you did here. Or like when you can have a conversation with someone and you're like, okay, that person also knows a little bit about music. You can get to some really specific and really interesting things that most people don't notice, admittedly, but I nerd out about a little bit. So it's fun for me.
that's very cool. I love that. And I want another hot take from you. Like, what's an opinion you have about advertising that most people in the industry would disagree with?
Okay. I have a couple, but I'll pick one. I think, I don't know. I don't think most people would technically disagree with this, but I think on paper, but I think people would disagree in practice. And that's that, like, this is not life or death. I think oftentimes advertising's like, we've worked late. We like, oh, this thing's a big emergency. I've slept in the office countless times before. And I'm just like, I think I'm now looking back. Before I was a writer. I was, briefly, I worked, I was a nurse. So that is just like actual life and death. And those people are incredible. And nothing about this like needs to be taken as seriously as it is sometimes. So I don't know, maybe that's a hot take. Maybe it's not. That like, I think just sometimes we take advertising a little too seriously. Like we're finding a fun way to tell people about stuff that they can buy. I think if you put it like that, it's like, this should be fun. Advertising should be really fun. And I think sometimes it gets a little too serious, and then people aren't having fun anymore. And I think that shows in the work. So I think it's not a hot take to say advertising should be fun, but maybe it's a hot take to say we should all take it a little less seriously. And I think we'd all be better off for it.
Serious. I love that take. Love it. Love it. I couldn't agree more.
Sorry, go ahead.
That should be in life in general. It's not that serious. Like,
I agree.
It's just a experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a weird thing. I think I could come up with others, but I think,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Simple and cool and powerful, I feel. And
I hope so.
yeah. we always like to close with this question, because we know like the power that a mentor can have in, your trajectory. So can you give a shout out to one or two mentors who really shape the way you show up in your work?
I can. Yeah. So, so I worked at Crispin Porter Bogusky. I met these two. Their names are Kelly McCormick and Darcy O'Neill. They now work at Work in Progress, which is a small agency in Boulder. They work on Domino's. They've been leading the Domino's brand for a long time now. But, they really, so like I was like a little lost in, my partner as well. And we weren't partners at the time when we were there, and then at Crispin, and then, Kelly, reached out to me, and Darcy reached out to Jake. I was like, hey, we think like you guys would be a good match. Like, do you want to work on something with us? So we did. And then from then it just like took off, and they, for how long it was, like 6-7 years or something like that. They were like, not only our mentors, like we learned by watching them, and they were great about answering questions, and of which we had many, and just like really helping us craft, everything, from decks to present to like, then when you're on set, and then like, how do you work efficiently in an edit when, clients want to see 100 options, so like, yeah, they really like took us under their wing and worked with us for many years. And we ended up, feeling like we became less like mentor mentee and more like just friends, right? And partners, by the end of our working relationship. And hopefully it's not over. But it got to a point where, we were up a little bit against a glass ceiling. There was nowhere else for us to go. So we, went over to Chiat here, 3-4 years back. So, but yeah, worked with them for a very long time. Wish I was still working with them. They're incredible. And yeah, so Darcy and Kelly, big shout out.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, for taking the time. I think you're such a cool, interesting guy, with a very, fresh perspective. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I know you must be very busy, so I really appreciate you taking the time from your very busy day.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Yeah, this was fun. I love talking about, it's fun to get out of the work for a minute to talk about it. So this was amazing. It was great to meet you. And this was really fun. So anytime.
Yay. I love it.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.